Globalization and technology has transformed modern businesses. The modern economy today runs on globally interconnected value chains. May it be Indian Railways carrying 23 million passengers, or FedEx handling 29 million pounds of freight per day, or the famous Arvind Eye Care Hospital performing 1,500 surgeries daily. All entities owe their success to highly effective and synchronized operating model attributing operations excellence. Be it humanitarian supply chain, military operations, natural disaster management or workings of global businesses, operations excellence is a strategic weapon to many. Symbiosis Institute of Operations Management, Nashik, a forerunner in anticipating the criticality that the field of operations beholds, is India's only institute fully dedicated to operations excellence. Under the gamut of Symbiosis International University, SIOM is a sui generis institution established with the mission of empowering and leading operations excellence. True to its mission, SIOM has been fueling the industry with operations professionals churned out of its flagship MBA program in operations management exclusively for engineers since its inception in 2005. Owing to its contributions to the field of operations, SIOM has grown beyond laurels of best industry-related curriculum, and it is all geared up towards Industry 5.0 with inclusion of machine learning, artificial intelligence and IIoT. Providing an excellent industry interface, SIOM, now an operational excellence hub, attracts top recruiters for operations-related profiles. SIOM boasts of its alumni presence and recruiters network in top companies across the sectors, be it manufacturing, logistics, retail, e-commerce, hospitality, banking and financial services, consultancy, pharmaceutical, and many more. Surmounting credibility by corporate recruiters is an outcome of holistic and multidisciplinary engagement of students, be it technical expertise, leadership values, or social sensibility initiatives, strategically woven in overall learning environment. Backed with robust project-based learning, Harvard simulations, case studies, research orientation and strategic industry interface through research conference, guest lectures, HR Summit, Operations Summit Tattva, TEDx, and 2 internships. The students are all geared up to take on the challenges of rapidly evolving technological capabilities and value chain complexities, the critical areas of concern for every organization today. SIOM, with intent of knowledge dissemination, offers corporate training programs, customized certifications and consultancy services in the area of operations. Some of our past and current beneficiaries include multinational corporations like GE, GSK and many more. Connect to us for anything and everything related to operations.
SIOM pulsates with the conviction that future CEOs and industry leadership will emerge from operations and supply chain domain, and we feel responsible towards it. This citadel of learning and competency development is exclusively for working executives, MBA aspirants, and the corporates. We act as catalysts to fuel their careers and, of course, develop operations competencies within organizations. This love for our niche has developed key result areas which will impact your triple bottom lines very, very positively. A perfect symbiosis of industry and academia. SIOM is one-stop shop for everyone who is excited about operations management. I invite you to SIOM not just to fuel your talent supply chain, but also to engage with us on your operations expertise and experiences. Come, let's engage.
Connect to the best in operations. Engage with SIOM for operations excellence.
Professor Srinivas. Sir,
Yes,
are you
can you hear me?
around?
Yes, I'm right here.
Yes, thank you so much. So we are starting with our session, sir.
Please go ahead.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very good evening, Professor Srinivas. I, Ratna Paluri, Associate Professor at SIOM. Let me start this session with a quote that is very close to my heart. All power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So for those of us who thought research is not our cup of tea or that we cannot do it, it is not true. Just that we need some guidance for doing good quality research. Last year, we at Symbiosis Institute of Operations Management, Nashik, initiated the Editor's Choice, which was a platform for deliberations with editors of reputable journals. The series of episodes contributed to the art of research reporting. Editor's Choice was crafted to bridge the gap between what the journals expected of the submissions and what the researchers submitted. Discussions on the content, direction, contribution to the field of knowledge, application of the findings of research, and future research directions were solicited through these discussions. Last year, with around 10 successful webisodes, they were graced by professors and editors such as Professor Rameshwar Dubey, Professor Dmitry Ivanov, Professor Robin Q, Professor Min, Professor McCarthy, Professor Charville, Professor Justin Paul, and so on. They presented views through the lens of the editors, and it was a treat for researchers. Every webisode had on an average over 150 registrations. And given the success of last year's Editor's Choice, we are encouraged to take forward this season's webisodes as well. Editor's Choice is also a prelude to our international conference on supply chain management. This would be in Jan 2022. It also serves as a platform for researchers to identify prospective topics for research and also guides them on good research writing. For today's episodes, we have more than 240 registrations. And I'm sure all the participants will gain immensely out of the discussions today. The participants include students, researchers, faculties from various universities. Today's webisode is the first one of the season's Editor's Choice. And we have with us a stalwart in the field of supply chain management, Professor Srinivas Taluri. Going by our previous agenda, we were supposed to have Dr. Vandana giving the welcome note, but due to some unavoidable and urgent commitments in her family, she's not able to join us today. She has conveyed her regrets for not being able to join us, but nevertheless, we have 240 odd participants eagerly waiting to hear from the speaker today. So like every budding researcher or otherwise seeks guidance for good research writing and good research papers, what better can it be than to hear from editors of some of the world's best journals? I'm extremely happy, extremely excited to introduce to you the speaker for today's webisode of Editor's Choice, Professor Srinivas Taluri, an expert in the field of supply chain management, co-editor-in-chief, Decision Sciences Journal. He is the Holland Mutzler Endowed Professor and Professor of Supply Chain Management at Michigan State University. His research interests include supply chain risks, buyers-supplier relationships, supply contracts, sustainability in supply chain, and performance evaluation. His methodological expertise lies in the areas of optimization methods, game theory, empirical methods, and data envelopment analysis. With more than 95 journal publications in various top-tiered academic journals, which include IIE, Decision Sciences, Production and Operations Management, Journal of Operations Management, EJOR, IJPR, IEEE, Transactions on Engineering Management. He has more than 12,000 citations of his work and has an H-index of 50. His journal article published in 2013, 2015, and 2020. He was ranked as a top 20 researchers worldwide in terms of the impact of his work in the domain of data envelopment analysis. He is amongst the top 1% researchers worldwide in the area of operations management based on publications in elite journals, and top 1% management scholars globally based on the citations and impact in the study conducted by Stanford University. He has delivered invited presentations at various countries that include Australia, United Kingdom, Spain, India, France, and the list goes on. His research is funded by companies and organizations such as Dow Chemical, Lear Corporation, McNeil Healthcare, and Center for Advanced Purchasing Studies. His consulting experience includes a variety of companies in the area of supply chain optimization, which include SAP, Johnson & Johnson, Accenture, and Dash Optimization. An outstanding senior award awarded by the Decision Sciences Journal for outstanding editorial contribution throughout thought leadership, Fulbright Hankin Distinguished Chair Award, Withrow Endowed Scholar and Award, and the list of his achievements goes on. Without any further delay, I hand over the session to Professor Srinivas. Sir, all yours, sir. Thank you so much.
Share my screen. Right?
Yes, sir.
Can. Hang on for a minute. All right, very good. Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Paluri. It's really a pleasure to be here. We do miss Dr. Vandana. Please pass on my best wishes to her. So today, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the Decision Sciences Journal. As you know, I'm co-editing this journal with Professor Xenophon Kufteris from Texas A&M. And then we'll also discuss a little bit about, what kind of advice I can provide with for scholars that you are that are trying to actually publish in these top tier journals. So we'll discuss some of those tips as well, and later on, we'll open it for any questions that you may have. So with that, let's get into the talk here. So just a brief history and focus about the journal. We just completed 50 years for DSJ, and which was last year. And basically the focus of the journal is to publish papers that are anchored in business problems. Okay. And the decision-making aspect is very important for us. So all of the papers that you actually see that are published in this journal have that decision-making flair that is attached to them. And the focus is mainly on supply chain and information systems. So any paper that is submitted to the journal has to have some link to those two specific domain areas. But as you will see, we've also extended that to consider other functional areas of business, which I'll talk about in just a minute. From a methodology standpoint, we are very open, in terms of entertaining papers that are, empirical, math modeling, experimental, case studies, simulation, so on and so forth. Now, what makes the journal different? Okay, so there are a few things that we have done. We, as I said, we took over the journal last summer. Zen was there from last January, and then I took over somewhere in middle of summer. That was last year, 2020. So the revised policy is that the research, any paper that is submitted to the journal should be motivated via direct interactions with relevant constituents. Okay, that could be a production manager, it could be a hospital administrator, right? Depending on the type of work that you're doing, that link is very important. And so if you're just motivating your work, based on lit review and references to popular press, that's not going to suffice. Okay, so this is a new restriction. So when you actually submit papers to the journal, we ask the authors to actually specify and provide us with details with respect to what kind of interactions they've had, okay, with relevant, constituents. Now, why this change, right? I mean, that's a question that potential authors, always ask me, because we've been receiving, this is not just for DSJ, but also I think in many of the other journals, top tier journals, we've been receiving papers, that are very stylized in terms of modeling. Okay, not so much the empirical work, but I'm talking about the analytical work. Where, for example, right? So I'll throw an example out there, which is, a single buyer, working with two suppliers, what kind of strategies to use, when to single source, when to dual source, right? Some sort of an analytical model that goes through this exercise. Okay. Now that's all fine, okay, but who is facing this problem? Who is this buyer? I mean, have you interacted with them? What kind of decisions are they currently actually making within this context, right? What are the assumptions? How are you actually validating these types of assumptions based on anchoring it in practice? So we're trying to get away from a lot of that stylized modeling. And again, I'm guilty of that stylized modeling as well. But I think moving forward, okay, that's one of the things that basically differentiates, decision sciences from some of the other journals. And second thing is, while I did mention that we're focusing on, operations, information systems, and supply chain, so the papers have to have, definitely a link to those areas. But we're also, entertaining, papers that are the interface of these critical functions and other functional areas of business, like accounting, marketing, finance, and so on. So if you actually go to our journal website, right, you would see, I'll talk about the department structure in just a minute, but you will see, departments that are looking at problems at the interface, okay, of these different functions. So that interdisciplinary focus is another important aspect. So if you're working on those types of areas, right, DSJ would be an optimal target for you, as well. Okay. Just in terms of the structure, we've got 16 departments and we have 28 department editors, and we've added a bunch of new departments when we took over last year, and I've listed those there. And we've got about 130 associate editors and 170 editorial review board members. Okay. So just to give you a sense of the changes that we've made here, when Zen and I took over, we had about 4,000 reviewers in our database. Okay. So as you can expect, right, with 4,000 reviewers, it was crazy in terms of the types of reviews that we were getting. Okay, so the quality was being impacted, timeliness was being impacted, the rigor of the reviews, right? So a lot of standard deviation across these metrics. So what we tried to do was we tried to condense that review base, okay, to this 170 reviewers, and we have thoroughly went and scrutinized their records, and we did that not only for the ERB board members, but also for the AEs and the Ds as well. Okay, so just to give you a quick snapshot here, right? I mean, in terms of where some of our Ds are from, as you'll see, right? They're all from very good schools, and their records are quite outstanding. And some of the more recent ones that we added, I've highlighted them in yellow here, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, Minnesota, York, and so on. And these are all very well-known scholars within, within the areas of operations and supply chain management. So the review process, I think it's important to briefly touch on this. Any paper that is submitted to DSJ comes to either me or Zen, right? And we evaluate the paper for fit, contribution, and practical relevance. And if those are checked, okay, then we pass it through the next level, okay? And if the paper is making enough of a contribution, of course. And our desk rejection rate is quite high. Actually, we've got 60% of the papers that actually get desk rejected. So if the paper passes muster, according to these metrics, at our level, then it's assigned to a department editor. And the department editor has, again, they have the authority to desk reject as well, okay? And likewise, the associate editor also has the authority to do that. So as you can see, there are multiple levels in which we make sure that there is enough of a quality control to make sure nothing, falls through the cracks. Okay. And once those layers, once you pass through those layers, then we select 2 to 3 reviewers from our ERB. And again, those 3 metrics that I talked about: rigor, consistency, and timeliness. And I'm very happy to mention that our average turnaround time on the original submission is about 35 days. And on the revision, it's about 33 days. Okay. And of course, we are constantly trying to make these metrics better. But so far, the efforts that we have put into these areas are reaping benefits for us. So how is the journal doing, right? I mean, your ranking is a big game, in this space. And of course, we want to be a part of FT50. We want to be a part of UT Dallas, and we are still waiting for the new FT50 rankings. We, submitted, a lot of supporting documentation for DSJ and made the, a pitch that, okay, it's a journal that is the main scope of the journal is that interdisciplinary nature of the journal, and there are very few in the domain of operations and supply chain management that focus on that specific aspect. Okay, so I mean, we'll see how the results come out. There's also a lot of political aspects that are attached to this, so you never know how these journals are selected. But we are happy with the most recent journal citation report, which came in 2020. That is the 2020 report, which came in on June 28, 2021. As you can see, our 2-year impact factor has actually doubled, okay, from 2019 to 2020. And also our ranking in the management journal space has improved significantly as well. And we are a part of those 4 journals in the empirically focused journals. So that's a list that we are a part of, with Journal of Business Logistics, the Journal of Operations Management, and Journal of Supply Chain Management. So in terms of submissions, this past year was incredible for us. We received about 550 submissions, and our acceptance rate is about 7%. Okay, and I'll talk about that later. I'll give you a little bit more details on that. So we publish 6 issues per year, total of 36 papers. So often, right, questions are asked in terms of what are the topics that we're actually entertaining. Again, we are not really focusing on any particular topic. We are open to a wide gamut of topics, as I mentioned, not only in supply chain and operations, but also those intersection areas with other functional other functions in business. Okay. But we do have, special issues that we run from time to time, but we're also limiting that to 1 special issue per year, because it's just a huge project, okay, to run a special issue. And sometimes, the quality control is also going to be an issue because you've got special issue editors who are managing those, and they got to work with our Ds and As, and, so that's why we are kind of keeping it to 1 special issue per year. And right now we've got 2 that are ongoing. So the first one is designing supply chain strategies for epidemic outbreaks. Okay, that is with Professor Suresh Sethi from UT Dallas is a part of that. And the other one is behavioral pricing and platform economies, that is interface with information systems and marketing. And I saw on your advisory board that Subodha Kumar is a part of that board. So Subodha is as the special issue editor for that piece right there. And we're also trying to pursue papers, invited papers from well-known scholars. And, you can go to our website, you can actually, download these. And so Professor Sunil Chopra from Northwestern has written one, which is the most recent one. And then we've had some others as well. And although it happens that all three papers here in the domain of risk management, but as you can see, that's a hot area right now, with everything that has happened with COVID-19 and so on. But yeah, we are trying to do that as well, so that to give better visibility for the journal. So is it getting harder to publish in DSJ? I mean, it is getting harder to publish in all the top tier journals. And when we took over the journal, the acceptance rate was at 12%. Okay, so within 1 year, we brought it down to 6.8%. So the answer is yes. Okay, and again, that's an artifact of the various levels that we have. Okay, we made significant changes to the DE board, the AE board, and the ERB that I was talking about. So there are multiple layers that the paper needs to pass through. And this all important link to practice, I think, which really differentiates us. Okay, I mean, the other journals, I mean, if you submit a paper to POMJ or JOM or MSOM or so on, I mean, they do ask for you to anchor the problem in practice, but we have actually taken that one step more, in terms of actually having these interactions with practicing managers to kind of motivate the problem, or to justify the selection of your variables, justify your model, right? So there's a lot more that is needed here. So that is a difficult bar also to clear, and that is one of the reasons why I think the acceptance rates have certainly gone down. So, in terms of, how do I select a journal to submit my work? A lot of junior faculty and doctoral students, approach me, all the time at conferences and so on. And they do ask me this question, where should I target my work? I mean, one thing that I see is that, okay.
May I request the participants to please? Thank you.
Thank you. So the question is, where do you want to submit your work? And of course, we want to look at journal quality. I mean, there are many journal rankings. There is UT Dallas list, there is FT50, there is ABCD ranking from Australia, and likewise there is ranking in Europe and so on, right? So you're looking at those rankings, you're looking at the impact factors, but more importantly, I think, right, if you're in a department, you would want to look at where is the senior faculty actually publishing their work. Okay, that is something that you have to consider as well. And then I don't mean that as a joke. That is something that is important, right? Because they are the ones that are going to be evaluating your tenure and promotion. Okay. Fit the scope of the journal. That is very, very important. Often I receive papers. Okay. I mean, these are really excellent pieces in accounting or finance or marketing, but they have no link to supply chain management or information systems. And our is kind of cast in concrete that way, right? So we need to have the papers have some, interface with, supply chain and information systems. If that's not happening, then the paper is going to get desk rejected. Okay. So it's important to, carefully evaluate the scope of the journal, see whether the paper actually fits. If you're not sure, I would encourage you to contact the editor-in-chief or even the functional expert, like the department editor, right? To check and see, right, whether the paper fits the journal or not. I mean, usually I get those requests and I read sometimes just an abstract is sent or sometimes a full paper is sent. So I take a, scan through it, and I also check with my co-editor, if I'm not sure, in some cases, all right, because there's so many different functions that we have. And then we decide, right? And then we provide the feedback to the authors, whether they should continue and submit the paper to the journal, or maybe it's a good idea for them to take the paper elsewhere. Okay. And also I would encourage you to look at topics published by the journal. Okay. And it would be a good idea for you to link those to your paper, so have some references. So if you're submitting a particular piece to the journal, right, it would be good for you to have a few references from the journal, right? I mean, otherwise you're not able to link it to, the relevant work that's being done in the journal. So, definitely that helps as well. Okay. And lastly here, review times are important, right? Because given the time it is actually taking to get these papers, published, right? From the point where you actually submit the paper to, and it goes through multiple rounds of reviews, right? At a majority of these top tier journals. So clearly those review times are important, right? And of course, most of the top journals are doing a good job, in terms of cutting these times down. But still, I think it'll be good for you to have an understanding in terms of what these times are, so that you can select the journal in a more effective manner. Which research areas to focus on, right? First, I mean, you don't want to get into a research area unless you're passionate about it. Okay, you should be interested in working on the topic, and I mean, this can be a topic that you have based on your literature review, or it's a topic that you worked on, if you have any work experience, right? Sometimes we get doctoral students who've got some practical experience and say, hey, this is a problem that I was really fascinated about. And, this is an area that I'm really interested in. So can I pursue, right? Then we say, all right, let's look at what the, existing work in this space is. And let's see if there is a contribution that you could possibly make to this large body of knowledge, if there exists. Okay. So clearly, right, you have to be passionate about the topic, okay? And the second question that you need to ask is that, are these topics actually relevant? Okay. So again, I'm not trying to throw any research area, under the bus here, but let's say you want to do job shop scheduling, okay? So, I mean, there are like 120 algorithms for job shops, scheduling. So what is the incremental contribution, right? If you come up with another, heuristic or something like that to, address this problem. So the incremental contribution is very, very low, in which case you may be passionate about the topic, but it's very difficult for you to get it published. Okay. So you not only have to look at what is it that interests you, but what is hot out there. Okay. So, I was just talking about, I've shown you the, 3 invited papers that we had, which are all in the space of risk. Okay. So risk is a hot topic now, right? Risk and resilience, so is healthcare operations and, sustainability in supply chains, all this, digital technologies in supply chains, right? So you've got all these different topics which are hot. So how do you find that sweet spot, the intersection between what you're passionate about and what is hot out there. Okay. So if you look at those, some sort of a Venn diagram, right, where you've got that intersection, right? So that's why I'm saying there needs to be a push and a pull. Okay, from your side, the push, which means there's an interest for you to pursue this particular topic, but there needs to be a demand for it, right? I mean, if there's no demand, then you may do excellent work, but it'll be very difficult for you to take it to a high quality journal. So I think that's very important to keep in mind, whether you're writing a research paper or you're selecting a doctoral dissertation, right? Whatever the case may be, I think playing at that intersection would certainly pay dividends. So how do you maximize your chances? Okay, and that was one of the questions that was asked, I think. How do you maximize the chances of getting your paper published at a top-tier journal? And I often say this to my doctoral students and junior faculty as well, that high-quality work is necessary but not sufficient. Okay, I mean, you may do excellent work, but you're not able to package it correctly. Okay, I'll guarantee you that it's not going to get into a top journal. Okay. So you need to pay significant attention to the introductory parts of the paper. Okay, so which I'm talking about, the first 2-3 pages are the key, because the reviewer often, right, they make up their mind, okay, whether this paper has merit or not, based on those first 2-3 pages. Okay, you may have some excellent modeling or empirical work or data later on, right? But if you have not motivated the problem well, okay, and if the problem is not relevant, okay, and if you have not anchored the problem in practice, right? If you have not excited the reviewer, okay, through these first 2 or 3 pages, okay, then clearly, it's not going to pass muster. Okay? So you need to nail that up front in terms of the theoretical and practical importance of the problem that you're looking at. Of course, later on, you need to do a comprehensive gap analysis. What has been done in this space? What are the opportunities? So how is your work actually addressing one of those gaps? Okay. Now, something else that I'll point out here is that, you can do a gap analysis, but in the management area, right, with the general space of management, these problems have been addressed in multiple functional areas. Okay, so you may be thinking, all right, within the operations space, I've gathered all the relevant literature, okay, and I'm going to, say that this is something that is an interesting problem to look at because nobody has addressed it. It has practical relevance and so on. But maybe in some of the other areas, okay, it can be in management, it can be in finance, right? These problems may be looked at from a different angle. Okay, so don't miss that large body of literature that's already existing, because it will look terrible when your paper goes out and somebody says, hey, it looks like you're reinventing the wheel here. People in finance have already done this. Okay, see, that's the challenging part, right? In business disciplines, you have to kind of do a broader scanning, okay, to see where some of this type of work has already been done. Okay, and methods. Okay, I cannot emphasize the importance of methods. If you're doing empirical work right now, we see a lot of papers with econometric models, panel data models, right, and nonlinear regression models. And if you're doing analytical work, we see a lot of stochastic optimization, game theory, and so on. But increasingly less emphasis on survey-based methods. So it's getting a lot more difficult to get those papers into top-tier journals if you're focusing on survey-based methods. So when I say that, that is a primary, gathering primary data through surveys using Likert scales and so on. So the push has been more towards using secondary data sources, and there are a variety of sources, okay, to be able to get that type of data. Okay. And follow the journal's format, please. Okay, while this may sound very simplistic, there is nothing that really irritates me more than receiving a paper, okay, and it's not following the Decision Sciences Journal's format, okay, in terms of how the references are, in terms of how the sections are. Immediately it tells me that, oh, this paper got rejected somewhere else, okay, and then the authors are actually trying to push it to DSJ. Okay? I mean, no editor likes that. Okay, no editor likes that. If they say that, all right, it didn't go to the journal that they targeted first, so let's see if we can take a shot here. Okay, and that's never a good thing. So please follow the journal format. Make sure that you dot all the I's and cross all the T's before you submit the paper. Okay. So again, those are some tips that you can consider. So how do I navigate the review process? Okay, this is a question that often comes in, right? First of all, when you submit the paper, okay, make sure you submit the paper, as I said, to the appropriate journal and the department. Okay, so if you see, we've got like 16 departments. Okay, you certainly don't want to submit the paper to the wrong department where it gets, moved around and you will lose some time in the process, and so on, right? And again, I would like to emphasize that follow the submission guidelines, because I'll give you an example, right? So we have this restriction now that your problem has to be anchored in practice. You need to have those relevant discussions, right? And if you go to our submission guidelines, that is clearly stated, okay, that you need to do this. Okay. But we do get papers, okay, where they have completely ignored that. Okay, they've really not addressed it at all. Okay, so then what we did was, all right, this is not working out because Zen and I have to look through these papers and we have to desk reject them, right? And it's just creating a lot of work for us. So then we said, all right, let's go in the submission process itself. Let's ask specific questions of authors, okay? Whether they talk to practicing managers, who are these practicing managers, okay? What was the problem that they were facing? What were the current solutions that they were using, right? How does your approach actually, help them in overcoming this problem, okay? So we have a set of questions, okay? So some of these people, they actually fill those things, they give us some data there, okay? And they think, okay, this looks like it's going to pass. And then you look at the paper, there's nothing that actually correlates with what they're saying. Okay. I mean, that just leaves a very bad taste, and I would strongly encourage you to make sure you follow journal submission guidelines. Okay. That is very, very important to do. Okay. Get used to those rejections. Okay. I mean, I've had so many rejections, okay, and if you get down on that, okay, I mean this is not the this is really not the business that you should be in, okay, because whenever you write a paper, you think, oh, this is a fantastic piece, it's going to review very well because you're very close to your work, you always think it's great, but there's always 3 people out there that can say, oh, this is really not good at all, All right, so get used to those rejections. Rejections are fine as long as you get good comments, okay? And that's what, as an editor, okay, I really emphasize to our review team is that, if the paper is getting rejected, okay, make sure that you provide constructive comments to the authors so that the authors can actually take those comments and revise the paper. If there's an opportunity to, sometimes we give a reject and resubmit, they can come back to our journal, or sometimes they can take it to a different journal. Okay. But the issue is, right, if you get a rejection and, you've got 2 lines, okay, saying that, oh, I don't like this paper, I'm going to reject it, it doesn't make a, contribution. I mean, that is not acceptable at all. And that is one of the reasons why we cut our reviewer pool down from 4,000 to 170, because some of these people were doing things like that. Okay, so that's not fair for the authors. Okay, it is not good for the journal, right? Across the board. Okay, that's not a good thing, right? So yeah, as long as you get good feedback, that's excellent. Okay, and you can, certainly, try to, improve on that and take the paper somewhere else. R&R deserves priority. If it's a if it's a revise and resubmit, you need to put your resources and make sure that is out of your desk. Okay, because the thing is that you already have one step in the door, right? And sometimes R&Rs they sit in the back burner, because you always like writing papers. This is because what you're kind of interested in. But in a revise and resubmit, you're trying to do what the reviewers are asking you to do, okay, which is not fun sometimes, right? And maybe you don't agree with, some of that, right? So for that reason, people may delay and, people may put that on the back burner. But, like I said, you already have one foot in the door. You should try to prioritize those and, get them back in review. And please comprehensively address the reviewer team's comments. Okay, don't do a shoddy job. Okay, if they ask you a question, sometimes I've seen responses which are shorter than the questions. Okay, I mean, that is just unacceptable. You have to be very comprehensive. Okay, you have to go the extra mile. Okay, and of course, please be respectful. Okay, when you provide the responses. Okay. Networking, okay. Be active at conferences. Of course, with what is going on right now, most of the conferences are online, but you need to be able to present your work at conferences, do reviewing, right? This way you'll get to know the people in your area, actively participate in editors panels, right? So that you would get to know these people, right? Have an opportunity for review for top journals. Sometimes you may not get that opportunity, but your advisor, okay, this is what I do. Sometimes when I get a paper to review, I include my doctoral student as a part of it, okay. So I'm still mentoring them on how to review it, but then when the review is completed, I do write an email to the editor saying that, hey, my doctoral students also helped me in this process. Would you be able to send them a letter of service? See, those are the things that will help because, again, many of these top journals are not going to send these papers out for doctoral students to review, okay? But you need to, work out these things in a clever manner so that you get your foot in the door, okay? And also to be able to network, meet researchers in your area. POMS does a good job of this. There are colleges at POMS, so for example, sustainability, or you have a mini conference, right? Where people who are working on similar topics, within that broad rubric of sustainability. So you could certainly make some connections there. Attend methodology workshops and, at DSI and POMS, there are a lot of these methodology workshops. And again, given the bar is constantly increasing for from a methodological standpoint to get into these top journals, I think it's important to do that and, possibly link with some senior scholars for joint work. Okay. So I'm almost at the point where I think, how much time do I have, Ratna?
So we have another 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, all right. So I'll be done soon. Okay. Some potential, pitfalls, right? Plagiarism, okay, that is a huge thing, right? So self-plagiarism is bad as well, right? So what's happening now is these journals, right? So for example, if you submit a paper to DSJ, it goes through a check, okay, a commonality check. Okay. So once it goes through that commonality check, it basically tells me, right, what is the commonality between the paper that is submitted and whatever there is, out there. And for our journal, and this is also true for POMJ, I know that 10% is what we look at. Okay, 10% is the maximum commonality that we would allow. Okay. Second, closure on papers, right? Specifically for doctoral students and junior scholars, sometimes they have a hard time in closing papers. Okay, it's like you can always add things to it, you can make it better, but at some point you got to say, all right, this is it, I'm done, I'm going to submit this paper to the journal. Okay. And also, I'd like to briefly comment about high-risk submission portfolio. Get used to the fact that not all your papers are going to get published in top-tier journals. So you should be, when you look at your paper, right, you should, in an unbiased manner, which is hard to do because, every paper that I write, I think it's great. Okay. It's obviously not, right? You have to look at it in an unbiased manner and decide, whether you should take it to a really top journal or somewhere in the middle. Okay. See, the submission portfolio is very, very important because somebody is going through the tenure and, promotion process. If you put all your eggs in one basket, like you're only targeting A-star journals, at the end of the day, you may have one paper accepted, right? And then at the end of 6 years, when your case goes up, okay, nobody's going to tenure you with 1 or 2 top-tier hits. Okay, so that portfolio, okay, is something that is very, very important. I'll also comment a little bit on lumpy submissions. Don't try to load up your pipeline just before tenure. Okay, and that doesn't give the right signal because people say, all right, is this person going to continue after he or she gets tenure? Okay, so there needs to be consistency. There needs to be productivity that is demonstrated. Okay, every year. Finally, I'll say that thematic focus is very, very important. Don't be opportunistic in your work. You need to make a name for yourself in a specific domain. Okay. Now, you may hit all the top tier journals, okay, but I don't care if there are no links. Okay. If there is no link, if there is nothing that you're really known for. Okay. So that's the whole thing, right? When you go up for tenure and promotion, that is the question that most people ask. I write tenure and promotion letters for so many schools. The key question is, has this person made a name for themselves, okay, in a particular area? Okay, so that's what the peer comparisons with comparable universities. That's all a part of that. And of course, going beyond that, journal top tier shares, citations. Those are all things that count. So anyway, so those are some of the tips. I've got one more slide here. So just some quick, advice for doctoral students. Okay, start getting into research very early in the program. Okay, gone are the days where you can get a job. Okay, just based on the type of school that you're graduating. You need to have at least an R&R or possibly even an accepted paper in a top-tier journal when you hit that market. And for junior faculty, balance is critical. Don't get overloaded with too many projects. You won't be able to do justice. Okay, your plate cannot be too full. So 2 to 3 projects. Okay, and for senior faculty, what we're seeing at Michigan State and some of the other Big Ten schools is that focus on these external grants. Okay, and taking more challenges in terms of interdisciplinary work. Okay, and working on cross-college type of initiatives. Like, I work a lot with College of Engineering folks and so on. That gets, visibility for the college that you're in. So with that, I'll conclude. Maybe I just went a few minutes over. Okay, but we'll stop there and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's very interesting to hear your views on publishing in top journals. Let's start with the question and answer round. So we have Mr. Bharat Sharma who wishes to ask you a question.
Yes.
Bharat, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, sir. Greetings for the day, sir, and everybody. I'm Bharat Sharma and I'm doing Masters at Symbiosis Institute of Operations Management. My question to you, sir, is how can researchers collaborate based on a particular interest? What are the best ways?
Okay. So the first thing is that, commonality in research topics, right? Which is where it all starts. But at research universities, okay, given that there are multiple people that are working, on similar topics, it becomes a lot more easier, okay, to find possible collaborators. Okay. But if you are at a teaching school, okay, and I'll give you an example. I was at Fairleigh Dickinson, okay, which is a small teaching school, and I spent 3 years there. And collaboration was very, very difficult, because people would just come teach their classes and they would leave. Okay. So in those cases, right, again, the networking aspects that I talked about, okay, being active at the conferences, being a part of these colleges at POMS, right? So that's the only way really for you to be able to get access to people that are doing similar type of work, outside. Okay. And sometimes it's difficult to accomplish that. And I've had a really hard time, okay, in actually getting out of that, kind of a teaching environment to go to a research focused school. Okay. But you have to start, somewhere.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Varun can please unmute himself and ask the question because it is related to collaborations.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So my question is, at times we collect a primary survey data, and this time due to COVID, we had many of us have collected online using online Google Form surveys. So whether it is effects of on the operational aspects of MSMEs in India. So the data has been collected using Google Form with lot many qualitative question and Likert scale question. Now I tabulate it, put it in tables, graph, write it. But now I feel when I present in the conference, they say the paper lacks analytical rigor. Now, one thing is, how do I improve it? So one thought I came, should I contact some statistician? Should I collaborate with some statistician who can help me do a proper, maybe what kind of tests can be done? How can I improve my Likert scale analysis? Can this be one of the way that you contact a statistician who can maybe join as a co-author and who's interested to work? Your feedback on, we have written a first draft. Now, how do we improve it and that way?
Well, I mean, without looking at the paper, it's hard for me to comment on it. But one thing that I'll say is that methodology is just a means to an end. Okay. And I don't think you should really think about, okay, what type of methodology should I use? The more important thing is the research question. Okay. So what is the research question that you're actually, addressing? Okay. What are the research gaps? Okay. Does it fill an important part of that gap? Based on that, right, your survey has to be designed. Okay. So it's not like, you think about, maybe we should do a survey on COVID and see what kind of responses do we get. Maybe we can tabulate those results and show some graphs. Okay. But what is the contribution there? So it needs to start with the research question, and then you go through whatever people have done, what are the existing scales, okay, because developing new scales, that's going to be a challenging part, where journals are not going to accept those kinds of things. So, unless it is, validated, right? So if you're borrowing existing scales, that's fine, but then what is the research question again? So, I would go back to that. And of course, once you address all of those aspects, then, rigorous statistical analysis needed. But before you get to that, what are the research hypotheses? What is the underlying theory that you're using to test these, and so on? So I think those are the important parts of the paper before you actually get to the analysis. Okay, so I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Send me a copy of it, okay, so that I can provide you with more detailed comments in terms of what you need to do, because it's kind of hard for me to, I gave you a very general answer, which kind of fits for any paper, but we can get more deep into it.
So one thing is on the authorship. One thing is authorship criteria. So we have heard that a person should be included as an author if he has contributed significantly. So when we are working in a groups, in a collaboration. So thinking about like authorship, can you throw some your experiences on the authorship criteria? And does it matter third author, fourth author, fifth author? Does the ordering method matter in terms of the contribution, or it can be alphabetically the third, fourth, and fifth author?
Yeah,
Thank you.
it depends from area to area. Okay. And I've seen, like if you go to sciences, right? Usually, if there is a lab and if there are 10 people that are working in the lab, they're all going to be co-authors, okay? And the lab director's name comes last, okay? Whereas in some of our fields, right, whoever the first author is, you get the maximum credit for that. And sometimes you list the authors' names in alphabetical order, in which case you just have a footnote that basically says the names are in alphabetical order. Okay. But generally speaking, right, in management areas, the first author gets the maximum credit, and then, of course, it goes progressively down after that.
Okay. And do you have any checklist? Some people say we should follow the author submission guidelines of the journal as a checklist before we send it to the journal. So like, for example, we got this perspective that research question, methodology, contribution, that should be very well coming out of the paper. And what I really learned from your interaction is motivation. Motivation to write about interaction with research constituent can also be a useful part. So any particular checklist apart from author submission guidelines?
Well, it's difficult to have like a checklist because these are the things that are most important. Again, from journal to journal, you'll have some differences. In terms of if you're submitting to mostly like a methodology journal, right? Then the most important part there is whether the methodology that you're proposing makes a contribution. Okay, if you're going to an application-oriented journal like interfaces or something like that, right? Then the checklist is going to be very, very different in terms of whether you've taken an existing methodology and actually applied it to a business problem, right? And then you showed some significant, managerial results, and based on those implementations. But the general guidelines that I've given you, and I think that should work across many journals.
Thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, of course.
May I now request Mr. Nived to pose his question, please?
Yes, sir. Greetings of the day, sir. This is Nived. I'm a first year MBA student at Symbiosis Institute of Operations Management. So my question is, how do we improve the quality of research in Indian research community? Can you throw some views on that?
Yeah, we are already seeing that, right? So if you take, for example, ISBs and IMs and so on, okay, we get very high quality work from those types of schools, and but to be able to continue the trajectory, okay, to some of the other schools, okay, I think it's very important to focus on the content and methodological expertise, okay, in the doctoral programs. Okay, so like for example, okay, our students in their doctoral program, the first 2 years they're taking methods classes. Okay, so they take all kinds of econometric classes, optimization classes, right? So because again, the bar for methods is so high right now that unless you're able to get that expertise, it will be difficult to hit these top journals. Okay, so that I think, and also the second thing is the incentive system, right? The incentive system has to be aligned, okay, with research productivity. Okay, and at most of the top schools in the US, again, okay, that is aligned very well, so that people exactly know what they have to do to be able to perform, not just in terms of getting tenure and promoted. That is another important factor. Unless you've got so many top tier hits, unless you make a name for yourself, and all the other things that I mentioned, right? So the system has to have those checks and balances in place, to be able to motivate or to be able to push everybody, towards the common goal, okay, of publications in top tier journals. So in India, just to answer that question for you, that is what is happening at IIMs and ISB and other places, but I'm not sure it really trickled down to some of the other institutions. And also it's kind of a resource allocation problem, right? I mean, we do get a lot of support from alumni base, we do get a lot of support from companies and so on, so the model has to be restructured a little bit, and also the kind of hiring that takes place, right? It's very important to get people with a lot of practical experience to be able to teach in the classrooms. We do that as a part of our teaching portfolio, but at the same time, we also have people that are very very good in methods and research expertise. Okay, so this is like a football team, right? You need offense, you need defense, you need special teams. So I think the US model is that where we try to balance it out across the board, which in some of the other places probably is not done to that extent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering the question.
In the interest of time, I'll have to restrict it to the last question. Professor Harshad, can you please ask your question? Please unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
Yes, sure. Sir, what content you expect in the cover letter as the editor? Because from my perspective, cover letter is the first point of contact from the author to the editor. So what should it cover?
Yeah, so I mean, a cover letter, again, you would provide us with a brief abstract, in terms of what the contribution of the paper is and so on. And one of the important things that we have to have in the cover letter is that this paper is not submitted elsewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I was doing this scanning the other day, right? And the commonality came out with a paper that was submitted. It goes through this check, and the commonality was around 89 or 90%. Okay, I was like, this is really crazy, So when I looked into that, so it gives me an opportunity to go and check and see where the commonality is stemming from. And it looks like this paper is actually submitted to a different journal. So we have the links between journals as well now.
Yeah.
Where if a paper is submitted to another journal, it will flag it. So, sanctions can be imposed, okay? If you were to tell us that this paper is only submitted to this journal and not submitted anywhere else, but the commonality comes up and says that, hey, this paper is in review somewhere else, okay? So that's a important thing. So, I mean, the cover letter also sometimes, will you can provide any particular reviewers, you can suggest some, reviewers. I've seen that, and either pro or against. Okay, so those are some of the attributes that we look for.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you.
There were many questions that were posed by the participants, and so please permit me to share those questions with you over the mail so that they can be addressed. And given that it'll really encourage more people to take up research. So for want of time, we'll have to stop this question and answer round here. But before I bid adieu, I'll have to propose the vote of thanks. My gratitude and thanks to our speaker for the day, Professor Srinivas Taluri, for accepting our invitation to spend some time with the research community and also trying to clarify all our doubts. So we have lots more which ought to be addressed. We would look forward to more sessions with you in the future, sir. Your talk on the editorial policies of Decision Sciences Journal and the tips for publishing in top-tier journal was spellbinding. You focused on multiple aspects. I'm sure which will be very insightful for the researchers. It provided many insights for most of us, and I'm sure most of us would explore newer areas. As you rightly mentioned, anchor the problem in practice. So I think this should be the key for research for most of us now. The event wouldn't have taken shape without the support and able guidance of our director. Unfortunately, she is not there today with us, but we would really thank her for her guidance and support. And this webisode is a culmination of the efforts of our research committee. Extremely thankful to them, and also thankful to the faculty and staff for their extended support. Very shortly, we shall be floating a feedback form. Request all of you to please fill the feedback form and return it to us. And also feel free to share with us the topics on which you wish to hear the editor speak for our future episodes. That's all we have for us now. Please join us for the next webisode of the Editor's Choice on the 6th of October. Professor Subramaniam Nachiappan will be addressing us in that webisode. Until then, happy researching. I, Dr. Ratna Paluri, signing off. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Srinivas. It was very, very nice of you to spend your time with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.